much. You've given us so much to think about. I need to understand more what the new science of politics is about. I think it goes beyond Madison just reading old texts and making observations. Can you tell us more what the new science of politics is and how it reflects Reformation, Renaissance ideas, or challenges them?
The new science of politics was, as Madison said, looking back and reviewing history and seeing what forms of government would work. They followed very closely an idea similar to the scientific method where you form a hypothesis of what is going to work and then you test it out, and that was basically what they were doing with our government, examining old governments, taking the successes and the failures and analyzing them and saying this is what we're going to draw from it.
So from that perspective, there's nothing new. There's only an acceptance of that which had worked before and a rejection of that which hadn't worked in the past, right?
The newness, I guess, came from them taking these ideas and taking various different forms of government and putting them together. It was a system of government that all these different aspects had never been drawn together before, and that was what made it new. It was borrowing a lot from old, and there were some new ideas, but most of the stuff was borrowed from Roman Republic, the Renaissance, and that was how they created the government.
Also, the first Federalist paper that was written in the first paragraph brings up the question of, can men actually form governments based off of reason and using past governments, or is it are they only able to do so from chance and force? And because before the Renaissance and Reformation, many times governments were created because a monarch came to be and the people needed someone to be there for their support, and so it was basically forced upon, or it just came up as chance.
Okay, let's move on.
In what ways, if any, do the new ideas developed during the Renaissance and Reformation affect your own thinking?
The humanism concept, the whole concept of focusing on the individual and the individual fully developing their own ideas is definitely something that we see in our own society today. People are encouraged to form opinions, they're encouraged to voice those opinions, and if the individualism and the humanistic movement hadn't ever developed, we wouldn't have that today.
I'm personally partial to the results of the printing press because it allowed so many people to access so much more information, and I think for a society to develop there needs to be a free flow of information, because I mean, where even would the founders be if they didn't have books to look at?
One thing that we changed from the Reformation was establishment of a religion. Each country, Germany, Switzerland, England, France, they each had a separate religion, and today we're trying to get away from that.
I think that another important idea that was brought up during the Renaissance was the idea of capitalism, and the fact that you can work hard to break out of your own economic position, because in the medieval times people were pretty much stuck and property could not be bought or sold easily.
The Renaissance republics tended to have citizen armies, not standing armies. Do you think our framers preferred civilian armies to standing armies? And what is the difference?
I believe that it's pretty obvious that they preferred the citizen armies with the Second Amendment and the right to bear arms for citizens so that they could form militia and have Minutemen. I think that they clearly showed their preference, I guess, for having the citizens be the ones that are in charge of it. And even though the president is the commander-in-chief and Congress has the power to declare war, it's still the citizens that make up the fighting force.
Also, with the Quartering Act from Britain, we were very scared of standing armies, so we didn't really want them to be in our space.
This can be seen through Patrick Henry's speech at the Virginia Convention, in which he says, you know, these armies have been discreetly mobilized just for us, they're meant for us, and so it was just definitely terrifying for the colonists.
This idea was also brought up in the English Petition of Rights of 1628, which just shows how big of a problem it was that it was shown so long ago. In Section 6, it actually said that troops should not be quartered, and in later sections it also brought up the idea of martial law not being used during times of peace.
Was there any historical or what do you think the basis was for them to have this fear of a standing army?
The fact that the British troops were quartered in some of the colonist houses, and the fact that they were given the ability to do writs of assistance and take the colonist property really scared the colonists, and that was something that forced them to decide that, based on the Petition of Right of 1628, they had these rights as Englishmen, and each of the colonies' charters established that every citizen in those colonies would have those rights. So the fact that these rights were being taken away meant that they had to protect them, and this was the way that they knew how to do that.
I also think events such as the Boston Massacre should be examined into why they were so terrified, because obviously they were there, they definitely hurt them. I mean, their injuries were directly visible.
Also, to go off of Quinn's thought, William Blackstone stated that a man's home is his castle. So I tend to agree with the statement that you should not be courting yourself in one man's home without their consent.
You emphasized in your opening statement the importance of scientific breakthroughs during the Renaissance and Reformation that led to new ways of thinking. We've undergone yet another scientific revolution since then. Does that mean our system of government needs to be rethought yet one more time?
I believe that we have a living constitution, and through things like judicial review, we are able to keep our constitution alive, and we are able to continue to change it. Our constitution is not a stagnant thing, and it is not something that was phrased in extremely definite terms. It's vague and it's meant to be interpreted, and because of that, it continues to evolve and it continues to go through certain revolutions. And so I think that the system of government that we have is perfectly adequate and excellent, in fact, and it keeps changing with us.
Yeah, I think that the founders were terrifically brilliant men, and they were able to foresee this through judicial review, as Quinn stated, and the amendment process, even ratification itself, and along with the amendment process, there's the allowance for state legislations to bring amendments about. So I think it evolves as well.